Hello, my name is Kasper Renee Johansen. Renee, I got a middle name all of a sudden. Yes, I got married this summer, so I added the name Renee. So now it's Kasper Renee Johansen, but I'm still your very own personal YouTube philosopher. I've been philosophizing all my life, or at least all my adult life so far. I've been philosophizing, and I've come down to this basically three different stances one can take, and sometimes it's maybe could be a mixture of all these three kinds, but there are actually only these three kinds when you boil it down to the very basic philosophical viewpoints one can take, the different stances one can take when approaching philosophy and the meaning of life. So here are my three different philosophical basic standpoints one can take in life. Number one is what I would like to call the scientific rational stance. Basis its viewpoints and its outlook on life based on science, scientific results, scientific explanations, where you use logic in your arguments, you use a lot of reason. Basically, the idea of this philosophy, you think that you can explain the world in rational terms, that you can sit and think thoroughly about it and come up with a reasonable explanation of things. And you like science, they kind of adhere to science when you have this stance. And you shy away from everything that doesn't seem like a logical, rational explanation towards things. Number two is what I like to call the religious transcendental stance, and that's not as easy as you might think. That okay, you're religious, you believe in Jesus Christ or Buddha or something else. No, it's when you view the world philosophically, you kind of borrow from the religious realm. You use a religious vocabulary, a religious thinking. And that's why I also call it the religious transcendental stance, because transcendental means to overstep, to go beyond something. Well, life works in mysterious ways. God works in mysterious ways. It's kind of like a viewpoint where you maybe could use the word like God. You could use the words like soul, concepts of soul, the concept of God, the concept of spirituality. You might use the word spirit and talk about human spirit, and then you basically have this stance of the religious transcendental when you use that kind of vocabulary and terminology of the religious lingo. So I hope you are with me so far. So that's two different approaches where one kind of stays within the reason and logic and science and would not like to go beyond, because that's not the way to explain the world. Well, your religious stance is kind of the opposite, where you can go beyond reason, you can go beyond rationality and transcend it. But there's a third way, and the third way is skeptic, doubtful stance, where you are skeptical and have doubts about actually everything, even science. You may use vocabulary from both the religious stance, and you may use also vocabulary and thinking from the scientific rational stance in a kind of mixture, but you are always kind of doubtful of both of these stances. You might say there could be a God, I don't know. Science says this, but it could be wrong. It may not know really. It may not have. Science can't explain this or something. You could use something like this. It's a skeptical viewpoint that dates back to ancient Greece, with these ancient skeptics, and you have a viewpoint that there's something always hidden from us humans. There's always some knowledge we cannot really gain insight to. The skeptical, doubtful stance may other words like that things are meaningless, that it doesn't have any inherent meaning. Really, Socrates, especially the interpretation, because I'm being skeptical here. There's a different kind of interpretations of Socrates, but one interpretation of Socrates, he's supposed to be the smartest man in ancient Greece because he says, "I know nothing." And he knows that he knows nothing. And that's the skeptical viewpoint stance, the doubtful stance that a skeptic that has this stance may say, "I don't know." But that's important that I know that I don't know, instead of making things up or just believe something that sounds good, that is a good story, or just buy everything science say, because science is also not exact science. So that's the three different stances or viewpoints one can take. But is that really it? Through my thinking of this, I have my own people who watch these videos I make, they know that I like this process philosophy, and I made videos about process philosophy. I put a link to my different philosophical videos about process philosophy. I put those links in the description below this video, so you can check them out there if you don't really know anything about this process philosophy. But process philosophy, for me, it's maybe not a fourth stance. It's kind of like a mixture of everything that harmonizes all these three stances for me, because process philosophy use terminology from religious viewpoints, and it use terminologies from science, and it use a viewpoint from the skeptical stance. First, I would like to explain process philosophy extremely quickly. It's from Heraclitus in ancient Greece. And Heraclitus, he said, you cannot step twice into the same river. So that's basically the philosophy, that everything changes, right? Everything changes. Even a rock changes during the course of time. It gets erosion from the weather, and it changes its appearance. And it's not the same rock as it was 5,000 years ago. It changes. Everything changes. Universe changes. Everything changes. So that's basically philosophy, that everything is a process of change from A to B. That's what Heraclitus said. And the one who framed this process philosophy is Alfred North Whitehead in the 20th century. And he said, and this is where the skeptical stance can come in, where Alfred Whitehead, he says, you cannot view the meaning of the universe like artifacts in a museum that's in class monitors, and you can go around, this is what it looks like, I can see here, it's on display in this museum. It doesn't work that way. There's always something hidden from us, because it's a process, right? And a process, when it changes, that means it's not about results, it's about the process, because there aren't really no result. And when you think about it in processual terms, truth is a result, and that means it cannot happen because it will change. It will become processual and not a result, aka the truth. I hope you get me here. And that's where process becomes a doubtful stance. But it also has a religious stance in it, this process philosophy, because a process philosophy, when something say it's a process, you can also explain it kind of in a mysterious way that something just makes things change. It's kind of like a law. It's a universal law that everything changes. It's kind of like a maybe a divine influence, and that there are process philosophers that becomes process theologists, because process philosophy is a grand theory of everything. There's a lot of that in philosophy that has a grand theory, and everything that has a grand theory is adhered to a basic religious transcendental stance, in my viewpoint. So, process philosophy is this grand theory of everything, and some process philosophers becomes process theologists, and it becomes a process theology for them, where this process is a God, and God itself is a process. But I'm not a process theologist, so I won't get more into that. But the stance is religious also, this process philosophy, transcendental. The last, it's also scientific, because this process of knowledge, process of understanding works very scientific. Process philosophy thinks, there's a process from A to B in understanding, and that means you have to go through steps to understand something, and that's the way science works, where you understand something in steps, and you observe it in steps in order to get something. So that's the scientific stance there is in the process philosophy, because it's rational explained in a logical terminology, this process philosophy. But anyways, I don't think process philosophy is a fourth stance in a way. It may be. I'm skeptical about that. You can ask yourself, is this a fourth stance? Maybe you tell me what you think. If you think it's a fourth stance or it isn't, please comment in this video about it if you think that. But anyways, I see it as kind of like a mixture of all the three. And it's one of the only philosophies I really know that has all these three stances in it that I know of. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next. Bye.